I walked into my dad's house carrying a pumpkin pie, only to stop cold in the doorway. Lorraine stood at the head of the dining table, smiling wide enough to show every tooth. Her hands clapped together with theatrical enthusiasm as she called out, "There she is. I saved you a seat, Wendy." Then she pulled out the chair with a flourish. Right next to Tyler. My ex-boyfriend. The man who'd cheated on me with her friend's daughter 6 months ago. The man who'd humiliated me in front of half our town. Gasps rippled around the table. My chest tightened. Tyler smirked from his seat, clearly in on whatever sick joke this was. Lorraine added loudly, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I just knew you two weren't really done. Sometimes people need a little push to work things out." Everyone stared at me like I was the unstable one. The difficult daughter. The problem child who couldn't let things go. My fingers dug into the pie tin so hard the aluminum crinkled. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't give her what she wanted. I simply placed the pie down on the side table and said calmly, "My name is Wendy Banks, and I knew this would happen. I need to explain how I got here. How a Thanksgiving dinner became a battlefield. I'm 26 years old, and I lost my mom when I was 14. Cancer took her slowly, painfully, and I watched her fade away while trying to memorize every detail of her face. 2 years after Mom died, Dad remarried. Lorraine swept into our lives with her 2 perfect children and her vision of what our family should look like. I instantly became the extra kid. The one who didn't quite fit her picture. Her biological children got praise for breathing. I got polite tolerance when I did everything right. When I started dating Tyler years later, Lorraine decided he balanced me out. What she really meant was that he was obedient, malleable, and easy for her to control through flattery and manipulation. When Tyler cheated on me last spring, Lorraine didn't comfort me. She blamed me. Said I'd pushed a good man away by being too independent, too stubborn, too much like my mother. That last comment cut deepest because she knew it would. I learned something important that day. Lorraine needed me to be less so her kids could be more. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I was staying overnight at Dad's house. I couldn't sleep and came downstairs for water when I heard voices in the kitchen. I stopped on the staircase, hidden in shadow. Lorraine's voice was low and conspiratorial. "It'll be good for her, Robert. Closure. She needs to learn how to treat people better. Tyler's willing to come, and I think seeing him will make her realize what she lost." My dad's response was hesitant. "I don't know, Lorraine." Wendy seemed pretty hurt by what happened. "Because she overreacted," Lorraine snapped. "She always does. This is for her own good." I stepped back from the staircase carefully, my heart pounding. They'd already decided who I was without asking me a single question. They'd written my story without my permission. That's when I first wondered what else Lorraine had decided for me. What other plans she'd made that I didn't know about. The thought kept me awake all night, staring at my childhood ceiling. 3 days later, my half-brother called. Liam was 19, Lorraine's younger child, and unlike his sister, he'd always been kind to me. His voice sounded careful when I answered. "Hey, Wendy. I need to tell you something. Mom's being really weird about Thanksgiving. Like, she's planning everything around you specifically." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "She's made a seating chart. An actual diagram. And she keeps talking to Aunt Patricia about how you're the reason the family's been tense lately. She's telling people you need an intervention or something." A familiar shame flared in my chest. The kind I'd felt my whole life in Lorraine's house. The feeling of being wrong just by existing. But this time, something different happened. Instead of crying or apologizing or trying to fix whatever imaginary problem I'd created, I felt something cold and clear settle over me. "Thanks for telling me, Liam." After I hung up, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Not just to what people said, but to what they didn't say. To the patterns I'd been ignoring. The next week, I went to Dad's house to help him fix a printer issue. He'd called me frustrated, and I was still the tech-savvy one in the family. While I worked on reconnecting the wireless setup, an email notification popped up on his desktop screen. From Lorraine. Subject line: Thanksgiving seating plan, trust me. I shouldn't have read it. I knew that. But my name was in the preview text, and my hand moved to the mouse before I could think better of it. The message mentioned Tyler by name. It mentioned me. And there was a line that made my blood freeze: this will make her finally admit she overreacted. She needs to see what she's missing before it's too late. Dad's footsteps sounded on the stairs. I quickly closed the email and stepped back from the computer. When he entered, he saw my face and froze in the doorway. Wendy. I held up my hand. Printer's fixed. I left without another word. On the drive home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. Revenge wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a plan forming in the back of my mind. That night, I pulled out an old folder my mom had left me. She'd organized everything before she died, wanting to make sure I had what I needed. Letters. Photos. Advice written in her careful handwriting for milestones she'd never see. And at the bottom, something I'd never paid much attention to, a financial document labeled, "For Wendy, College and Future." A trust account. Set up when I was born, funded by my grandparents and my mom's life insurance. Money specifically meant for my education and whatever came after. I'd used some for college, but there should have been a substantial amount left. I pulled up my online banking and logged into the trust account for the first time in months. The balance made my stomach drop. It was much lower than it should have been. Thousands of dollars lower. Small withdrawals every few months for the past 3 years. Regular. Consistent. Deliberate. And I'd never authorized a single one. The next morning, I took a personal day from work and went to the bank. The teller was a woman in her 50s who listened to my explanation with growing concern. She disappeared into the back office and returned with a manager and a stack of printed documents. "Ms. Banks," the manager said carefully, "someone added themselves as a secondary account manager 3 years ago. The paperwork has your father's signature, but it was processed when you were 23. You should have been notified." My blood turned to ice. Who was added? She turned the document around so I could see. There, in neat print, Lorraine Patricia Banks. Secondary account manager. Authorized to make withdrawals for educational purposes. "This isn't legal," I whispered. "I never authorized this. My father wouldn't have." But I stopped. Because Dad would have, wouldn't he? If Lorraine asked sweetly enough. If she explained it was just to help me. If she made it sound reasonable and caring. The manager's expression was sympathetic. "I'd recommend speaking with a lawyer." My friend Sarah recommended her family's lawyer. His name was Mr. Chen, and his office smelled like old books and coffee. He reviewed the documents I'd brought with careful attention, making notes on a yellow legal pad. Finally, he looked up. His expression was serious but not unkind. "Ms. Banks, this looks like what we call quiet siphoning. Small amounts over time from an account the victim doesn't monitor closely. It's more common than people think, especially within families." My voice came out hollow. "Can I prove it?" "Absolutely." He tapped the papers. The unauthorized secondary manager status, the withdrawals that don't match any educational expenses you can verify, the lack of your signature on the authorization form. This is a strong case. What do I do? Document everything. Every withdrawal date and amount. Any communication about money. Any conversations you remember about your trust. Then we decide how you want to proceed. He paused. "The question is whether you want criminal charges or just restitution." I thought about Lorraine's smile at that table. Her trap. "I'll let you know." I called Dad that evening. My voice was steady, but my heart hammered. Dad, did you or Mom ever add Lorraine to my trust account? Long silence. Too long. When he finally spoke, his voice was uncertain. I think she just needed access for your college paperwork. There were forms that needed 2 signatures, and you were busy with finals. It was supposed to be temporary. Did you check that she removed herself after? Another pause. No. I trusted her to handle it. That told me everything. He'd never verified. Never followed up. Lorraine had done exactly what she wanted, and he'd let her because it was easier than questioning his wife. Because I was the complicated one, and she was the one who made his life simpler. Wendy, is something wrong? I'll call you back, I said, and hung up before he could ask more questions. I sat on my couch in my small apartment and felt something shift inside me. The last piece of doubt crumbled away. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft. Calculated and deliberate. I spent the next week documenting everything. Dates. Amounts. I requested full account histories from the bank. I dug through old emails and found messages where Lorraine had offered to help with paperwork for my college expenses. I screenshotted text messages. I organized everything into a folder on my laptop. I labeled it Thanksgiving. Because that's where this would end. Not in a lawyer's office or a courtroom. Not yet, anyway. First, Lorraine needed to understand that I wasn't the broken, desperate daughter she thought I was. She needed to feel what it was like when someone you underestimated turned out to be 3 steps ahead. Every night, I added to the folder. Every morning, I felt calmer. More focused. More ready. The old Wendy would have confronted her immediately, crying and emotional and easy to dismiss as hysterical. The new Wendy was learning patience. And patience, I was discovering, was the most dangerous weapon of all. Liam showed up at my apartment unannounced the week before Thanksgiving. He looked miserable, shuffling his feet in my doorway like a kid about to confess he'd broken something. Mom told Aunt Patricia you're selfish with money, he blurted out. She said you got a big inheritance from your mom and refused to share it with the family when we needed help. I blinked at him. What money? He looked sick. The trust fund. She said your grandparents left you everything, and when Dad's business had problems last year, you wouldn't help even though you could have. My jaw actually dropped. She'd stolen from me, used the money for who knows what, and then told the entire family I was the greedy one. The manipulation was so perfect it was almost beautiful in its cruelty. Liam, that's not true. None of it. I didn't think so. He ran his hand through his hair. But she keeps saying it, and people are starting to believe her. Even Madison thinks you're being cold to Dad. I wanted to scream. Instead, I touched Liam's shoulder. I'll handle it. I promise. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed carefully in a navy sweater and dark jeans. Simple makeup. Hair pulled back. I wanted to look like a woman who had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. I packed a leather folder in my purse. Inside were printed bank statements, highlighted in yellow. Legal notes from Mr. Chin. Copies of the unauthorized account access forms. And one more thing, a letter my mother had written me before she died, sealed in an envelope marked "For when you need strength." I'd never opened it. I'd been too afraid that reading her words would break me. But today, I tucked it into the folder anyway. If there was ever a day I needed my mother's strength, it was this one. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. The woman staring back at me was calm. Ready. Unbreakable. I picked up the pumpkin pie I'd baked the night before and headed to my car. Everything was about to change. I arrived at Dad's house an hour early, which clearly surprised Lorraine. She opened the door in her apron, her smile faltering when she saw me standing there with the pie. Wendy. You're early. I wanted to help set up, I said pleasantly, stepping past her into the house. You always do so much for these dinners. Thought I could make it easier. Her eyes narrowed slightly, trying to read me. She couldn't. I'd spent weeks practicing this expression in the mirror, open, friendly, completely unreadable. It was driving her crazy, and I could tell. That's thoughtful, she said slowly. The dining room needs place cards made. I'll handle it. I smiled at her and walked toward the dining room, leaving her standing in the hallway looking confused. Good. Let the queen feel uncertain in her own castle. Let her wonder what I was thinking. Let her doubt her own carefully laid plans. By the time other family members started arriving, I'd set the table perfectly. Including the chair next to Tyler. I was carrying serving dishes from the kitchen when I heard Lorraine's voice in the hallway. Low and confidential, speaking to someone just out of sight. She'll break down, Lorraine whispered. Just be patient. She always does when she's cornered. Get emotional, make a scene, and everyone will see what I've been dealing with. Tyler's familiar laugh made my skin crawl. You're sure this'll work? Trust me. I know her better than she knows herself. I stood frozen behind the kitchen door, balancing a bowl of mashed potatoes. Break down? She thought I would break down? After everything she'd done, she still saw me as the weak one. The emotional one. The one who would crumble under pressure. I set the bowl down on the counter carefully. My hands were completely steady. I straightened my sweater, checked my reflection in the microwave door, and smiled. She had no idea. No idea at all. I picked up the bowl again and walked into the dining room as calm as winter ice. Just before the last family members arrived, Lorraine made her grand gesture. She walked to the dining table where I was adjusting napkins and tapped the chair next to Tyler with one perfectly manicured finger. This is your spot, dear, she announced, loud enough for Dad and her daughter Madison to hear from the kitchen doorway. Right here. It'll be good for you. Sometimes we need to face things head-on. I looked at her. Then at the chair. Then back at her. My expression gave away nothing. Is that what you think? She beamed, clearly taking my question as uncertainty. I know best, Wendy. I always have. That's what mothers do. The word mothers landed like a slap. She knew it would. She'd used it deliberately, claiming a role she'd never earned while erasing the woman who'd actually been my mother. I nearly laughed. Nearly told her right then what I knew. Instead, I simply said, "We'll see," and walked away. Behind me, I heard her confused silence. She'd expected tears or anger or pushback. She'd gotten none of it. The game was already changing, and she didn't even realize it. Dad pulled me aside while Lorraine was greeting guests at the door. He looked at me with concern I hadn't seen from him in years, like he was finally noticing I existed. Wendy, honey, are you okay? You seem different. Different. Not upset. Not angry. Just different. Because for once, I wasn't performing the role he expected. I wasn't the peacemaker or the apologizer. I wasn't making myself smaller to keep everyone else comfortable. I'm fine, Dad. It's just, with Tyler here, I thought you might be upset. Lorraine thought it would help with closure, but if you're uncomfortable, you'll understand soon, I said softly, cutting him off. I promise. Just wait. His face creased with worry. That sounds ominous. Does it? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Maybe you should have thought about that before you let her plan this whole thing without asking me. I walked away before he could respond. Behind me, I heard him sigh heavily. Good. Let him be uncomfortable for once. Let him wonder what was coming. Everyone gathered around the table. Lorraine orchestrated the seating with unnecessary fuss, making sure everyone saw her place me next to Tyler. Aunt Patricia exchanged glances with Madison. Liam looked at me sympathetically. Small talk started. Lorraine steered it expertly, asking about jobs and weekend plans. Then, right as people were relaxing, she struck. So, Wendy dear, why don't you tell everyone why you and Tyler really broke up? I think there's been some confusion about what actually happened. She said it loudly. Brightly. Like she was asking about the weather. Light, uncomfortable chuckles rippled around the table. Everyone stared at me, waiting for my response. Tyler shifted in his seat, clearly coached on what to expect. This was it. The trap sprung. The moment Lorraine had been building toward. She wanted me emotional, defensive, looking unstable in front of the whole family. Perfect. Everything was going exactly as I'd anticipated. I smiled gently at Lorraine, my voice calm and measured. That's an interesting question, Lorraine. But maybe we should talk about something else. This is Thanksgiving, after all. She leaned forward, her smile sharpening. No, I think honesty is important in families. We should be able to talk about difficult things. That's healthy communication. Healthy communication, I repeated softly. You're right. Honesty is important. Around the table, people were starting to look uncomfortable. Dad cleared his throat. Madison reached for her water glass. Tyler smirked like he knew something they didn't. I reached down and pulled a small envelope from my purse. Cream-colored. Official-looking. I placed it on the table in front of me, my hand resting on top of it. Before we talk about my relationship, maybe we should discuss other kinds of honesty. Family honesty. Financial honesty. Lorraine's smile froze. Her eyes locked on the envelope like it was a snake. Wendy, what is that? Her voice had changed. Higher. Tighter. That was her first crack, and everyone heard it. I didn't open the envelope. Not yet. I just let her stare at it. Tyler leaned toward me, his voice low and urgent. Don't make a scene, Wendy. Come on. Be reasonable. I turned to look at him fully for the first time that evening. This man who'd cheated on me. This man who'd let Lorraine use him as a weapon against me. This man who thought I was still the doormat he'd walked over. I whispered back, just loud enough for him to hear, you should worry about yourself, Tyler. Not me. His face went pale. Because somewhere in his tiny, self-absorbed brain, he understood that I knew something he didn't. That this wasn't going the way Lorraine had promised it would. Lorraine's voice cut across the table, sharp now. Wendy, if you have something to say, just say it. Stop being dramatic. Dramatic. There was that word. The one she'd used my whole life to dismiss anything I felt or said. Dramatic. Emotional. Overreacting. All the words designed to make me doubt my own reality. I stood up slowly, the envelope in my hand. Okay, Lorraine. Let's not be dramatic. Let's just be honest. I opened the envelope and pulled out the bank statements. Not all of them. Just the ones with the withdrawals highlighted in bright yellow. I placed them on the table in front of me where everyone could see. This family values honesty, I said, my voice steady and clear. So here's some truth. 3 years ago, someone added themselves as a manager to my trust fund. The one my mother and grandparents set up for me. The one that was supposed to pay for my education and future. I looked around the table. Dad had gone white. Aunt Patricia leaned forward, squinting at the papers. Madison's mouth was open. That person made regular withdrawals. Small amounts. 1,000 here. 1,500 there. Over 3 years, over $18,000 disappeared from my account. Money that was legally mine. Money that had my mother's hope and love attached to it. Lorraine's fork clattered to her plate. The sound echoed in the absolute silence. Who would do something like that? I asked quietly. Then I picked up one more paper. The authorization form. And I turned it around so everyone could see the name printed at the bottom. Lorraine's face drained of all color. She started stammering, her usual confidence completely shattered. This is taken out of context. I was helping. The paperwork was complicated, and you were so busy. Did you take money from Wendy's trust fund? Dad's voice shook, but it was firm. Angry in a way I'd never heard directed at Lorraine. She reached toward me across the table. Wendy, you misunderstood. I was going to tell you. We needed help when the business was struggling, and I was going to pay it back. Liar. The word came from Liam, not me. He was staring at his mother with betrayal written across his face. You told everyone Wendy refused to help. You said she was selfish. But you stole from her? Madison pushed back from the table, her chair scraping. Mom, what did you do? I pulled my hand away when Lorraine tried to grab it. No. I finally understood, Lorraine. I understood that you'd been undermining me for years. Making me smaller so your family could be bigger. And when that wasn't enough, you took what was mine and made everyone think I was the problem. I placed one more document on the table. A letter on law firm letterhead. Mr. Chen had prepared it perfectly. A clear explanation of the unauthorized access, the theft, the legal options available to me, and most importantly, a notice that he'd already contacted the trust administrator and the bank. This is from my lawyer, I said calmly. He's already started the process to restore my funds and hold the responsible party accountable. There will be penalties. There may be criminal charges, depending on what I decide. Lorraine's hands were shaking. She looked around the table desperately, seeking an ally. But her own children were staring at her like they'd never seen her before. Aunt Patricia had her hand over her mouth. Tyler had pushed his chair back, clearly wanting to disappear. I did it for the family, Lorraine whispered. We needed. You did it for yourself, I interrupted. And then you tried to destroy my reputation to cover it up. You told everyone I was selfish. Difficult. Unreasonable. You made Dad think I needed an intervention. You brought my ex-boyfriend here to humiliate me. My voice didn't rise. Didn't waver. That was the most devastating part. I wasn't hysterical or emotional or dramatic. I was simply telling the truth. Dad stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward. His face was red, and I couldn't tell if it was shame or anger or both. Lorraine, is this true? All of it? She couldn't answer. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Oh my God, Madison breathed. Mom, what did you do? Liam pulled out his phone. I'm calling Grandma. She needs to know about this. No. Lorraine's voice was shrill now. Liam, don't. But he was already dialing, walking out of the room. Aunt Patricia stood and said quietly, I think I should go. Others followed. The carefully planned Thanksgiving was dissolving into chaos, and Lorraine was at the center of it, finally exposed for exactly what she was. Tyler tried to slip toward the door. I caught his eye and said clearly, Don't come back here, Tyler. Ever. He practically ran. Dad sank into his chair, his head in his hands. When he looked up at me, there were tears in his eyes. Wendy, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. I should have checked. I should have. Yes, I said simply. You should have. The next hour was a blur. Lorraine tried to explain, but her story kept changing. First, she'd meant to tell me. Then she'd planned to pay it back. Then it wasn't as much as I claimed. Then she'd only done it because Dad's business was struggling and I'd seemed fine anyway. Madison and Liam were horrified. They kept asking questions their mother couldn't answer. Dad sat in silence, looking like someone had punched him. Eventually, Madison said quietly, Mom, I think you need to leave. This is my house. Lorraine protested. It's Dad's house, Madison corrected. And right now, you need to go. Lorraine looked at me one last time, and what I saw wasn't remorse. It was fury. Fury that I'd won. That I'd outsmarted her. That the weak, dramatic, emotional stepdaughter had destroyed her perfect facade. She grabbed her coat and purse. Liam offered to drive her to Grandma's. As she walked past me, she hissed under her breath, "You'll regret this." "No," I said clearly. "I won't." The door closed behind her. The house felt lighter immediately, like a dark cloud had lifted. I sat back down at the table and took my first deep breath in hours. Dad came to sit beside me. "Can you forgive me?" "Eventually," I said. "But not today." 1 year later, I hosted Thanksgiving at my apartment. It was small, but it was mine. Cozy and warm and filled with people who actually cared about me. Dad came. He'd filed for divorce from Lorraine 3 months after that disastrous Thanksgiving. He was working on rebuilding our relationship, attending therapy, learning to actually listen. It was slow, but it was real. Liam helped me cook. He'd moved out of Lorraine's house and was going to community college, working part-time. Madison came too, apologizing again for not seeing what her mother was doing. No Lorraine. No manipulation. No traps. Just family. Real family. Before dinner, I finally opened the letter my mother had written. My hand shook as I unfolded the paper and read her familiar handwriting. "My dearest Wendy, if you're reading this, you've reached a moment when you need strength. Remember, you are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not the problem. You are exactly enough, exactly as you are. Stand tall, my girl. Be brave. Be true. I am so proud of you. Always. Love, Mom." I smiled through tears and tucked the letter back into my pocket. Then I raised my glass to the small group around my table. To new beginnings. To honesty. And to family that actually deserves the name. They clinked glasses with mine. Through the window, snow was starting to fall. Everything felt clean. Fresh. Possible. I'd spent so long trying to fit into Lorraine's version of who I should be. But that Thanksgiving, the year before, I'd finally become exactly who I was meant to be. Someone who stood up for herself, who refused to be small, who demanded truth. The trap Lorraine set for me had become her own downfall. And I'd rebuilt my life exactly the way I wanted it. I was finally, truly free.